"Hey, you there! Drop what you're doing!" a gruff voice bellowed from behind. Harold turned slowly, confusion knitting his brow as two uniformed officers stalked toward him. One, Officer Tompkins, jabbed a finger in Harold's direction, while the other, Officer Landon, smirked as though expecting a spectacle. Customers gaped from behind displays of cereal boxes and fresh produce. "Is there a problem, officer?" Harold asked, voice steady despite the sudden knot in his stomach. Tompkins swept a disdainful glare over Harold's trim, if old-fashioned, attire. "We got a report of suspicious activity," he said, his tone dripping with accusation. "You match the description. Male, possibly shoplifting." A hush settled among the shoppers. Harold blinked once, struggling to comprehend. He'd come here for groceries, just like everyone else. "Me?" he said softly, placing the apple down with care. "I'm just trying to buy some fresh fruit. I'm not sure I understand." Landon snickered. "We'll see about that. Empty your pockets, old man." Harold inhaled, the sting of their words tightening his chest. Yet something else kindled within him, a quiet dignity that refused to bow to intimidation. If you believe everyone, young or old, any race or status, deserves respect, tap that subscribe button now and drop a comment on where you're tuning in from. Because what happens next will challenge everything these officers thought they knew. Officer Tompkins tightened his grip on Harold's arm, steering him away from the produce aisle and toward a small corner near the store's exit. The metal racks rattled as customers tried to clear the path. Some paused to watch, wide-eyed, while others kept walking with hurried, uncomfortable steps. "Check his bags," Landon ordered, voice echoing across the glossy floor. He peered at the handbasket Harold still clutched. Inside lay a half-filled carton of eggs, a loaf of wheat bread, and 3 bright apples, completely ordinary groceries. Harold felt his pulse pound in his ears. But years of life had taught him the value of composure. "These items are all I have," he said, voice calm but firm. "Is there something else you think I have taken?" Tompkins sneered. "We know your type. Caught plenty of shoplifters who seemed harmless." He rifled through Harold's handbasket, practically crushing the eggs in the process. Nothing else emerged. Harold exhaled, glancing around for a store manager. Surely someone in charge could clarify he'd done nothing wrong. But before he could speak, Tompkins thrust a receipt under his nose, grabbed from Harold's coat pocket. "What's this?" Harold recognized the slip. It was his receipt from earlier in the day at a different store. He had purchased medication, a few toiletries. "That's from the pharmacy. Not here." Landon snorted. "Pharmacy, huh? You sure you're not forging these receipts?" Around them, a handful of shoppers began to record the incident on their phones, their whispers filling the silence. "That man's just buying groceries. Why are they harassing him?" Harold steadied himself, heart pounding with both outrage and something deeper, an intense disappointment. "Officers," he said, voice shaking only slightly, "I've done nothing wrong. You can see what I intended to purchase." He gestured to the basket. "And that receipt is from another store. I am happy to verify." Tompkins opened his mouth to retort when a grocery store employee rushed forward. "Is there a problem?" the young woman asked, glancing nervously at Harold's gray hair and kind eyes. Landon waved her off impatiently. "We're handling it." But in that moment, the seed of doubt was planted among the bystanders. What none of them knew was that Harold's unexpected reaction, an act of quiet resolve, would soon send shockwaves beyond this grocery store's walls. A timid cashier in a store uniform sidled up beside the young employee. I I can vouch for Mr. Green, she stammered. He comes in here every week, buys fruit, bread, sometimes a newspaper. I've never— Tompkins cut her off with a dismissive wave. This isn't your concern. He pivoted to Harold, eyes narrowing. Let's see some identification. Harold's hand trembled slightly as he reached into his jacket. He produced a worn leather wallet and carefully extracted a driver's license, placing it on the nearby counter. Tompkins snatched it up, studying it with exaggerated scrutiny. Harold C. Green, he read aloud. Address on Maple Drive. Age 81. His tone dripped with skepticism, as if Harold had falsified a document to appear older. Landon craned his neck to glance at the ID. So you're a local, he muttered. Doesn't mean you're not up to no good. A spark of indignation flickered in Harold's eyes. Officers, are you accusing me of a crime? Because if so, I'd like to know the charges. The tension in the air thickened. An older woman in a floral dress stepped forward from the gathering crowd. He's a veteran, she proclaimed, voice trembling with anger. He served our country. Show some respect. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the onlookers. A couple of them hoisted their phones higher, capturing every second. Harold inhaled slowly, memories of his time in the service fluttering through his mind. Grueling boot camps, lonely nights overseas, the unwavering belief that he was fighting for a better America. Yet here he stood, singled out in a grocery store by the very individuals sworn to protect citizens. Tompkins shifted uncomfortably under the growing scrutiny. It's just procedure, he insisted, though his voice had lost some of its edge. We got a call about suspicious behavior, and we're required to investigate. This old man happened to fit the description. The store manager finally arrived, his tie askew, eyes darting between Harold and the officers. What seems to be the issue? He asked nervously. Before Tompkins or Landon could reply, Harold lifted a hand. I appreciate your concern, sir, but I'd like to handle this properly. He turned back to the officers, voice calm yet resolute. I'm ready to cooperate, within reason, but I'd also like to know my rights. Outside, police sirens howled as a second patrol car arrived, lights dancing through the storefront windows. This new presence only intensified the spectacle. People crowded near the automatic doors, whispering in disbelief. Harold noticed how some onlookers looked, torn between stepping in and staying out of harm's way. A short, stocky officer, Sergeant Bowers, emerged from the newly arrived cruiser. Spotting the tense standoff, he hurried over. Tompkins! Landon! He barked. What on earth is going on? Dispatch mentioned a potential theft call, but I see no evidence of wrongdoing here. Tompkins and Landon exchanged glances. This man was acting suspicious, Landon muttered. We were just following up. Bowers crossed his arms, assessing Harold. The old man met his gaze, a flicker of quiet strength shining through the fatigue in his eyes. And have you found any reason to believe he's stolen anything? Bowers pressed. Silence. Eventually, Tompkins shook his head, grudgingly. Not yet. Sergeant Bowers exhaled sharply, pivoting his attention to Harold. Sir, I'm sorry for any inconvenience. Do you mind if we just verify a few details? Harold inclined his head. I understand you have a job to do, Sergeant. I'll answer any reasonable questions. The manager stepped forward at last, clearing his throat. Mr. Green is a regular customer here. I've never had any complaints about him. Tompkins looked ready to protest again, but Sergeant Bowers raised a hand. That's enough. Let's do this properly. Turning to Harold, he offered a small nod. We'll check the store's security cameras. If there's no wrongdoing, you'll be on your way. Harold smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. "Thank you, Sergeant. I'd appreciate that." But the unexpected turn was about to unfold. Before the manager could escort them to the security room, Harold leaned toward the old woman who had defended him earlier. "Young lady," he said gently, causing her to smile at being called young in her 70s. "I'd like to speak for a moment. Do you mind?" She blinked, confused. "Of course not." Turning back to the officers, Harold took a deep breath. "I've seen harder days than this. I won't press charges, on one condition." The hush that fell was profound, every person in earshot dying to know what the gentle old man would say next. Harold's request left everyone stunned into silence. Even Tompkins and Landon, still bristling with defensive energy, appeared momentarily disarmed. The manager paused, mouth slightly open, as if uncertain whether to intervene or let this extraordinary scene play out. Sergeant Bowers was the first to speak. "And what exactly is that condition, Mr. Green?" Harold pressed his lips together, thoughtfully. Then, with surprising steadiness, he said, "I want these officers to sit with me for a cup of coffee, right here, in this store. I won't walk away feeling like the villain, and I don't want them to leave thinking I'm some criminal." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the onlookers. Tompkins scowled. Landon scoffed under his breath, but Bowers looked intrigued. "You want to have coffee?" Harold nodded. "Yes, I'd like to talk, man to man. Figure out why it escalated to this point." A few customers clapped softly, inspired by Harold's bold yet peaceful approach. The store manager, recovering from his shock, quickly ushered everyone toward the small in-store cafe area. The tension of the past few minutes lingered, but there was also a strange sense of relief that violence had not erupted. Within minutes, Harold, Tompkins, and Landon found themselves seated around a circular table with steaming cups in front of them. Sergeant Bowers and a handful of curious customers hovered at a respectful distance, observing. Harold wrapped his hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into his arthritic fingers. "I fought in Korea," he said quietly, eyes fixed on the two officers. "I've known fear and suspicion, but that was decades ago. Never thought I'd come home and feel it in a grocery store." Tompkins shifted, guilt flickering across his face. Landon stared at the table. Harold continued, "I don't hate you, but I do wonder. Why did you feel the need to target me? Was it my age, or something else?" He let the implication of race hang in the air. No one dared speak. It was as if the entire store leaned in, collectively holding its breath for the officer's response. Officer Landon cleared his throat, the sound harsh in the stillness. He finally raised his gaze to Harold's, eyes clouded with uncertainty. "We got a call," he muttered. "Someone said there was a man acting weird, lurking near the produce." "Lurking?" Harold repeated, arching a gentle eyebrow. "I was taking my time, picking out apples. An old man can't move as fast as he used to." Tompkins let out a low sigh. "I guess we jumped to conclusions." He paused, as though the words he needed to say next were almost painful. "Look, I'm sorry. Maybe we were too quick to judge." A hush followed his admission. Then the high tension cracked like ice under a thaw, replaced by something raw and new. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable, an unlikely moment of reflection born from confrontation. Harold dipped his head in acknowledgement. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. I'm not trying to shame you, son. But I'd like you to remember this feeling next time you see someone who doesn't fit your expectations." Sergeant Bowers stepped forward, relief evident in his posture. He gently patted Harold on the shoulder. I'm sorry you had to go through this. As far as I'm concerned, you're free to go. We'll make sure the caller's concerns are addressed properly next time." The manager hurried over, face flushed. "Mr. Green, your groceries are on the house today. It's the least we can do." Around them, customers who had witnessed the ordeal applauded quietly. Some wiped away tears at the sight of Harold graciously shaking hands with the officers who had treated him so poorly moments before. Harold pressed a final question. "Could I trouble you both for one more thing?" Tompkins and Landon glanced at each other. "What is it?" Harold stood up slowly, leaning on his cane. "Make a promise, right here. Promise me you'll treat the next person you suspect with the same respect you'd show your own family." They hesitated, but nodded. Then, as the crowd parted, Harold exited with measured steps, never once looking like a victim, but instead like a man who had quietly reshaped the narrative. If Harold's story moved you, let us know where you're reading from and how you believe communities can build bridges of understanding. Don't forget to hit subscribe and tap the notification bell for more real-life tales that spotlight injustice and remind us of our shared humanity. Your voice matters. Together, let's stand up for dignity and respect in every corner of society.